That's how you turn a frown upside down.
That's right.
Although I'm still pissed. But I've also discovered the first major screw up of the project. Back in the shop today, I'll show you what we got going. I'm kind of at a point now where I can go in a couple different directions as far as the order of operations. Just last week I started working on the body panel that has the 2 fuse boxes. So I could continue with wiring, but this area in here, which that body panel goes on the side of that upper tube right here. Right here, it goes here and the 2 fuse panels are in here. It gets kind of busy in this area with the hoses that have to go through there and also the steering. And specifically the steering hoses are hydraulic lines, so those are kind of stiff. I think today I'll work on, before I start getting the wires situated, I'll work on getting the steering in so I can get those hose routed to where they need to route to. And then that way I have that stuff located for figuring out the best path to route the wires. I'll take you along for all the wiring adventure and getting that looking as clean as possible, but there's basically a panel down here under the seat that fuse blocks and a lot of the wiring kind of goes to. All right, so there we have the steering column, the steering valve, and the plumbing. Now you won't really see these hoses like in the final install. It sneaks through there in the middle, and then there's a dash panel that covers it up in the front. So, but you can see with the wiring panel kind of going there, you know, it gets busy there with all that hosing that's got to route through there. So I figured to get all that in there before I put the wiring panel up here and then start routing the wires. So I think that's what I'll work on next, is getting the panel kind of hanging up here, and then we'll get the wiring started. All right, so I got the fuse box panel installed. It's just kind of loosely screwed down right now. Obviously I'll have to button up all these wires. You can see some of the wires going back there to some of the accessories back there. Also I have this relay panel for some of the engine relays. But I've also discovered the first major screw up of the project. There's a panel that goes on top here. I forgot to weld tabs, mounting tabs, which you see like right there. So, such as it is. I'm not going to grind on the powder coat. I could grind the powder coat and try to surgically weld some tabs to it, but I think what we're going to do instead is make some brackets that come off of the tabs for the front panel here, and just make this kind of L and up, and then catch the bottom of the panel. I'll use this plumber strap to mock up a little bracket and then draw that up in Fusion and cut it out on the plasma table. What'd you start to say?
See how you were doing it if you were working on the bracket.
Oh, I don't know. I'll probably put that off.
Yeah. I was going to ask you if you 3D modeled that area and whether or not that might help you make the bracket.
can't remember how good that area came out.
Yeah. Maybe possibly 3D it again with the panel in there, 3D it from underneath might help.
Yeah,
Just a thought.
and maybe have a more accurate measurement.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, at least give you a pretty good starting point. The other thing you could do is prototype one with the 3D printer, maybe.
Yeah. Probably do that regardless.
Yeah,
Like even if I don't do the 3D scanner.
right.
But if I do the 3D scanner, I could video that, show the usage of that. You know?
Right. Yeah, it might make an interesting video to problem solve that, you know?
Right. That's how you turn a frown upside down.
That's right.
Although I'm still pissed. All right, it's morning. We're back at it. Let me show you what we got going on today. So we got the wiring started. I have this little group of relays here for the engine. It's kind of part of the engine harness, fuel pump, fans, and computer in the injectors and such. We got my fuse box. Fuse box is there, which is essentially the wiring for the rest of the buggy. I think today, though, a lot of the wiring goes on a panel that sits under the seat down here. I think today what we'll work on is getting some of the stuff located in there that's going to be where it's going to live, so I can kind of know where wires are going to route around. The hydraulic pump for the rear steer mounts down there, and then you can see the battery goes in there. So I'll probably get those two things in there and kind of located before we start getting the wiring panel in there, and it gets harder and harder to get to. And it'll benefit because it'll be in there located for routing around wiring-wise. So that's in there. If you're wondering if that stuff is as heavy and as unwieldy as it looks, it is. The other thing that we'll mess with today is this panel that I screwed up and forgot to put tabs in for. Modeled up some brackets in Fusion, and I'll end up cutting them out on the plasma table, but you can see them here. I made, when I want to test things, especially things that are sized weird, or I want to check the height on something that I don't have an exact measurement for, sometimes I'll 3D print them. So that's what I did here. I 3D printed this basically in the thickness that it's going to be in, and my 3D printer kind of messed it up at the end, but it's still usable for this purpose. The last few layers of this got stringy and kind of messed up the print, but since this is just sacrificial and for mock-up, it'll work for this, but you can see how this is gonna go. We'll use tabs for the front panel that goes on the front here, as a way to kind of bracket up to the panel that goes on the top. There's a panel that goes across here, flat like this. So I'll make a few of these, cut them out on the plasma table and bend them. And then you can see they go up, and I'll just drill holes in the top panel. These will keep that top panel down. So not ideal. I was kind of worried about forgetting something like that along the way. There's just so much. I mean, there's probably, you look at all these tabs on where all the body panels go, there's probably 200 of these damn tabs that I welded on. And we did several checks before we sent to powder coat, but you know, I kind of figured we might miss something. I wish it was something that was in a less conspicuous location rather than right on the top, but I think we'll still be able to hide the screw up in a way that still looks pretty sweet. All right, so we'll just get a zero established here. I'm just gonna cut one for now, see how it fits and everything after we bend it up, and then I'll cut as many more as we need later. It's gonna be a little smokier than normal because I don't have any water in the tank. It's a water table, but this time of year it'll freeze, so I'm not gonna be doing a lot of plasma cutting, so probably just leave the tank empty. All right, so there's our zero. I'm gonna do a dry run, just make sure it looks okay. All right, that looks good. All right, I'll get the plasma cutter on and we'll get you in for a tighter shot. Just like that, we have a new part. Love this thing. For those who might not know, this is what's called a height gauge. This is used by machinists to very accurately measure the height of things. I'm using it here along with the 246 block there sitting on the table to scratch some layout lines for the bends of this part. Now, generally you would use this with something called a granite surface plate, which is an extremely precision flat stone surface, but I don't have one of those. So I'm using it with the flattest reference source that I have, which is my fab table. So I'm first using the scale on the vertical portion to get it roughly in place, and then above the indicator there's a lockdown screw on the right there, and the little screw on the left, it basically pushes and pulls on that housing to fine adjust. The 246 block here is just to hold it perfectly square. Now, I only have it square in one direction here with the 246 block. If I really wanted this to be perfectly square, I would have to use another block to butt it up against, but it's not really that important for this. It's way more accurate than like using a tape measure, so. there you have it. Here's the finished product on that. Did test fit, it looks like it's gonna work. The astute of you might have noticed that I had a really long section on here. The purpose for that was, I wasn't really thinking about it when I was modeling this up because I've been used to bending really thick metal lately, 1/4 inch. And you would bend, if this were really thick, you would have an excess on here to have enough extra real estate to span the die of a hydraulic press brake to get that to bend, but I don't really need that on, this is just 16 gauge. It's pretty easy to bend and it'll bend with a leaf brake, so I don't need that excess. So I'll probably revise the model a little bit, take that excess portion off, put a fillet on these corners, and maybe put another hole in the top here, giving you more options to secure that with 2 screws maybe. But there you go. All right, so there's the finished product on that repair. Not really repair, but you know what I mean. It's pretty sturdy, really. I think it's gonna work out just fine. Obviously, I'm gonna take the brackets off and paint them, and I'll paint them black, but I'll leave these top screws in it when I paint it. 1, to protect the threads, but 2, the heads of the screws will end up being black, so it'll blend a little bit better on that panel. All right, that's it for the repair of the panel. As you can see here, I have the brackets painted already, so that's all ready for that to go in. Obviously, it's less than ideal to have to put the panel on that way with brackets. You know, I worried about, before the powder coat operation, missing something like that, but there's just so much to hit. I mean, there's easily over 100, probably approaching 200 of those little tabs all over the place for those panels. So I kind of figured it might, I might end up missing a spot. We checked before the powder coat several times for any missed welds on any of those tabs, but we just overlooked the tabs for that top panel. I had a lot of electronics in there at the time and the hoses and everything when we mocked up the panel. So I think I figured, well, I'll just put the tabs on after we get everything torn down, and then I just forgot about it, of course. So I think it's gonna be just fine though. Those brackets are gonna be good, and if it's not stiff enough, we can put another bracket on there, or even just use thicker metal and make them again. I have the CAD for it now, so I could always make it with thicker steel. But that's it for this one, so thanks for watching.